Welcome. In today's explainer, we're going to dive into a really powerful mental error that shapes almost everything we think we know about investing. It's the sneaky flaw in our logic that's so subtle, most of us never even realize it's there.
To really wrap our heads around this, let's start with a high-stakes story. And you know what? It has absolutely nothing to do with money, but it has everything to do with this exact problem. It's a classic example, and it just perfectly sets the stage.
The problem was, armor is incredibly heavy. I mean, you can't just slap it on the entire plane, or the thing won't even get off the ground. So they had to be smart about it, placing that extra protection only where it was absolutely needed the most. So they did what any of us would do, right? They gathered the data they had, and they found the damage wasn't random at all. It was clustered on the wings, the tail, and the main body of the aircraft.
Okay, so take a look at the data yourself. All the bullet holes are in these specific spots. The most logical answer just seems obvious, doesn't it? You reinforce the places that are getting hit the most. But that's not what they did.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because it totally flips our thinking on its head. A statistician named Abraham Wald pointed out the massive flaw in their logic. He said, "You're only studying the planes that survived. The planes that got hit in the engines or the cockpit, well, they never made it back to be studied at all. That lack of bullet holes in those areas, that was the real data."
And that story brings us right to the core of what we're talking about today. It's this powerful cognitive bias that messes with us every single day, especially when we start looking at the world of finance and success. So, in simple terms, we make huge decisions based on a totally incomplete story. We're listening to the winners because, well, they're the only ones left to tell the tale. The failures are completely silent, and that silence creates this massive warp in how we see reality. And this just lays it out perfectly, doesn't it? The data that naturally comes to us is filtered. We see the triumphant returns, the genius stock pickers, the funds with these amazing track records. What we don't see is the giant graveyard of failures that lines the path to that success.
Okay, so let's see how this whole thing operates in the world of investing, where its effect is, let me tell you, subtle but incredibly powerful. It's baked right into the tools we use to measure how the market is doing. Think about a major index like the S&P 500. We think of it as a list of the 500 biggest companies, but it's more like a championship sports team that's constantly kicking out its weakest players. When a company starts to falter, like General Electric did after being a titan for decades, it just gets quietly swapped out. This makes the index look way stronger and more stable than the overall market really is. So that performance you see, that beautiful chart always going up and to the right, it's a curated version of reality. It isn't exactly a lie, but it's definitely not the whole truth, because all the worst results have been systematically erased from the data you're looking at. Oh, and this happens with mutual funds all the time. It's a classic move. A fund company might launch, say, 10 different tech funds. Over the next decade, 9 of them are duds. They underperform and get quietly shut down or merged into something else. But that one fund that succeeds, that's the one you see advertised everywhere, held up as proof of their genius. We're seeing the star player's stats, and we think it represents the whole team's average. All right, now let's talk about the most seductive, the most dangerous form of this bias, the stories of investment legends, the gurus, the icons, the people whose success looks like a roadmap we can just follow. We hear these quotes from famous investors, people who made concentrated bets on just a few stocks and won big. And this strategy, it gets framed as the ultimate sign of genius and boldness. It's a really compelling story. But here's the question. What about the countless others who took those exact same bold risks and lost everything? Their stories just disappear. For every person who went all in on Amazon in 1999 and is now a legend, there are thousands who did the exact same thing with a company like, say, Pets.com during the dot-com bust and got completely wiped out. Their stories aren't told. They've just vanished from the narrative. See, when a risky bet pays off, we call it genius. When it doesn't, we just get silence. This is what's called the base rate of failure, and it's the thing we always ignore. For every bold strategy that looks like genius, there might be a 95% failure rate for everyone else who tried it. Thinking you can bottle and repeat that 5% lightning strike, well, that's a fatal mistake in investing. You scroll through social media, you read these headlines about people making fortunes overnight, and it is so easy to feel like you are doing something wrong. But you're not comparing yourself to everyone. You're comparing yourself to the most extreme, visible, successful examples. And that is a comparison that is fundamentally unfair, almost designed to make you feel bad. So this all sounds pretty discouraging, right? But here's the good news. Once you can actually see this bias, once you know it exists, you can start to fight back. You can make much clearer, much better decisions.
Here are 4 simple but really crucial mental tools. First, stop asking what worked and start asking how many people tried this and failed. Second, always remember that most success stories you hear are filtered. They're highlight reels. Third, try to understand the real odds of success before you take a big risk. And finally, stay humble. Even the biggest winners will often tell you they were just one bad decision away from becoming one of the silent failures.
Because when you think about it, the real lessons, they're usually not in the celebrated successes that everyone shouts about. They're in the stories we will never, ever see. Those silent failures, those planes that never returned, they're gone. But the silence they left behind, that should teach us something too.